You are an Iron Man!
Welcome to episode 60. Today I'm joined by Paul McCormac. Paul, you're very welcome on the podcast.
Hello, Mickey. How's it going? I am delighted to be joining you in the podcast. I've been a fan of the podcast now for a good while, listening to many of the episodes, and I know that I'm coming on the shoulders of some very inspirational stories and some very fine triathletes, of which I'm not, I have to say.
You're already a bit too humble because I have your timeline in front of me, and let me tell you, by the time we get through this, I'll feel like I've done a triathlon. I'll be that exhausted with the highs and lows that is the journey of Paul McCormac.
Yeah.
I suppose a good place to start, Paul, is you're not long off the back of your 2025 season, and you just recently finished the Cascais 70.3 in Portugal. How did that go for you?
Well, Cascais was an amazing place. I have to thoroughly recommend it to any triathletes that are contemplating Cascais. It was Eamon Brady, triathlete, that put me on it, and he said it was just an amazing place, an amazing course. And I had entered it like this time last year, and had been training well all winter, was planning to target the point series. As soon as that wee list came out, I entered like about maybe 7 or 8 races on the point series list. The first one was a thigh, the triathlete. And all was going great. Had a great winter of training, worked at everything, worked at my swimming, which is my big weakness, and my running. But then 31st of March, 1st of April was due to go to Spain for a week to train. And 31st of March, I dislocated my great toe doing martial arts, popped the bone out through the skin, ended up in A&E all night. They were going to take me to surgery and pin it, but I managed to talk them out of that. Phoned a surgeon who spoke to them, and he talked them out of that. And so it wasn't a great start to the year. Immediately, you're lying in A&E, and somebody's trying to sew your toe back on in the middle of the night. And you're thinking, will I make Cascais? You're thinking, when's the first race? This is how your brain works. You're not thinking about, well, I was thinking about my poor wife who arrived in, and we had our bags packed. We had our cases packed. I had the bike hired and transport, and we were going to Altea in Spain, an area I know where I've cycled that quite a bit. And this was all happening. She's looking at me, and we were just so relieved that I didn't have to go to surgery, because they talked about putting a pin in the toe, and that would have been a disaster. But there was quite a nasty wound. Like, the toe was basically hanging off. A few people nearly fainted at A&E when I came trotting in. It turns out the nurse was a partner of one of the triathletes that I treat locally, and I did get the VIP treatment, and they were amazing down in Craigavon Hospital. But yeah, I ended up in an air boot for 5-6 weeks and a night splint. And you know, if you just had a broken foot, you could swim, but I couldn't do any of that because there was danger of infection, and it was a nasty wound. So I always push the boundaries a wee bit when it comes to injuries, and like very quickly was back in the gym, and you know, the air boot on me, I was rowing and ski erg, I'd find a way of tying the air boot onto the rowing machine that I could do something, you know. So but I couldn't swim, so I was out of the water for maybe 5-6 weeks, and I couldn't. I remember asking the surgeon at fracture clinic, would it be okay if I try a wee jog here at week 6-7? And he looked at me with the eyebrows, but I went ahead and did that anyway. And I tried to get money back for all these races. This is a big criticism of Triathlon Ireland, is that when you enter a race, you can maybe transfer, but you can't get your money back. I don't think the system's right. I'm a former race director at cycling, and if someone phoned me and said there was a death in the family or sustained a fracture, I'd give them a refund. But in triathlon, that doesn't work. And so being very stubborn, I got on to Triathlete to see could I get a refund and explain the situation, and said no, but we'll let you move race. I'd entered the 10k race, and I looked at the 5k and I thought, I wonder could I do a 5k. So tried to do a couple of trots around a local run arena here, and then went and did the 5K race in triathlete and got round it well. But I couldn't run. For Ireland, I think I still banged out 25-minute 5K, which was a miracle. But the last K, I was in bits. And then that got me back. I think the next race that entered was Sheephaven. And anybody in Sheephaven this year, it was pretty horrific swim. They went to shorten it, but I was well out of my comfort zone in terms of getting out into the very choppy waves. And so I managed to do Sheephaven swim and the cycle, and then I'd run about the 13K, and I knew that after that I was going to be causing negative issues rather than getting anything out of it. So I ended up doing 6 races here, and then the final race was Cascais, and I have to say I really enjoyed it. I'd entered the half, and it was a lovely, lovely race. The most beautiful bay to swim in. Amazing water, and we had great conditions. It was a bit hot on the day. Lovely bike course. As I was doing the mountains at the start of it, and particularly coming back into Cascais, was I glad I wasn't doing the full. But I really, really enjoyed it. And the run in Cascais was during the hottest part of the day for the halfers. So it was hot. It was about 27 degrees. And I had a good first 10K. And then the last 10K, I probably had a bad habit of walking a wee bit too long through the feed stations to try and get my temperature down. Whenever you go after a race and you analyse what did I do right, what did I do wrong, what could I have done better, probably could have been a wee bit quicker through those. It was funny even watching Kona this year, the ladies, and just with the superheating, a lot of them were walking through all the feed stations, and and that's why they're just trying to, it's always a balancing act. Do you go a bit harder, a bit faster, and do you take a risk of blowing up, or do you play it a wee bit safer? But overall, I really love Cascais, and it's a lovely town to visit. The atmosphere of the 4 Ironman events that I've been to, it's probably one of the best atmospheres. The town is just basically taken over, and the way they do the start of it and all, it was special. Like, it was pretty, pretty special. Like, I would highly recommend it.
Great stuff. Paul, you've already mentioned a few buzzwords there. Your injury caused by martial arts and how that impacted on triathlon. And those are 3 very, very strong themes that we're going to explore throughout this podcast, because you've had a fair few injuries. You've been around the block a few times with regards to martial arts, and you've had your fair share of triathlon. It's an epic journey, and I want to take you right back to the very start. Talk me through what it was like for you, Paul, growing up as a child.
Well, my childhood, it wasn't a straightforward, normal childhood like many people. I was a child basically in the late 60s into the 70s, and as everyone knows, we had a conflict here during the 60s, 70s, 80s. My father, John McCormac, was a civil servant. He was based in Belfast, and unfortunately in 1973 he was shot and killed by loyalists. He was over in the Falls area of Belfast to do a visit to help someone out, and whether he was targeted or not, or just in the wrong place at the wrong time, we don't know, but he was shot. And 3 days later he died on his 30th birthday, which just puts things into perspective and in terms of his age at that time. Mm-hmm. My mother, God bless her, was plunged into grief and poverty as well. There was 4 of us under the age of 6. So very, very tough times. Back in the 70s, there was no real support for people in terms of counselling, in terms of financial support. So, life became a bit of a struggle. There was days that we didn't get to school. There was days like our house wouldn't have had any money about the house. You had to be very careful about everything that you were doing. People going away on school trips and all, that's not something that we enjoyed. Sometimes uniforms had to be passed down. There were very, very tough days. And my father's brother my uncle Hugh McCormac was a sergeant in the police training school in Enniskillen. And in 85, he was shot and killed coming out of Mass by the IRA. So again, the family, plunged into grief. It didn't affect us that much because the year before, to put it into perspective, I had a brother that died. And just through misadventure, probably down to the area that we lived, he was involved in an accident and suffered a head injury and another injury, and he unfortunately passed away. It was me that found him and rushed him to hospital along with a cousin, and he died probably on the way there. So at 17, it was probably a lot to handle for a young person. I think I was a couple of weeks just before my 18th birthday, in the middle of my final year of A-levels. So it wasn't a good time. Now, at the time, Gareth was the name of my brother, and Gareth and I were both doing martial arts. We have a family that had been doing boxing and martial arts for years. Myself and my brother Shane lied about our age in P6 and joined the local boxing club. And we had all, went to boxing over many years, and then Gareth was really interested in martial arts, and we went and did kung fu and then kickboxing, and he was a junior champion at that. So probably after he died, I probably just threw myself into training. Grief is a very, very difficult thing for people, and it's a difficult combination of trying to keep moving forward, but trying not to move forward because you haven't got that person to bring with you. And I think somehow through the training and the martial arts, we had kickboxing competitions coming up. I just turned 18, so I was allowed to fight now in the adult competition. And I think I just started into that. From being a boxer, I used to run in the mornings, so I'd run. And funny, growing up in Portadown, running was a strange thing because I'd run down the Gavahi Road, which is a nationalist area, and then at some point you go in under a bridge, and the bridge takes you up into the centre of the town, which is a loyalist area. And if you were even in those days walking up through the centre of the town on your own and someone spotted that you were a Catholic, you would get a kicking. But this strange thing, when you put the hoodie on and you had the hand wraps on and you're running like a boxer, you just look strange. So when you disappear down Woodhouse Street, nobody can catch you. So this was the strange phenomenon of running in those days. But I worked hard at my training, me running, me getting a bit of gym work done. I had the punch bag in the garage as well as going to the classes. And I remember going down to the Irish Championships in Dublin, back in the National Stadium, at maybe about 18 and a half at the stage. And lo and behold, I won it. So I won my first national title at 18 against all these men, men as I saw them then, men in their 20s, late 20s, 30s. And I had beat them all in this tournament. And it was just, a shocker to the coach and everybody else. And that was really the start of my success at fighting. And then I ended up with 7 All-Irelands and 11 Ulster titles. And I had a good go at that over many years. It was the way I fighting in the World Championships in those early days, really all over the world, all over Europe, and fighting in America. And that was me basically through my years of going to uni. For me, going to uni wasn't about studying to be a physio. It was about training camp. I got to uni and I went, this is great. I'm going to get the use of all these facilities. The kids now are so blessed that locally there's gyms everywhere and there's facilities everywhere. Back in 1986, whenever I went to university, there was no gyms here locally at the standard that there would have been out in University of Ulster. And for me, that was about training camp and trying to, further myself on to win these titles that I wanted to win. So probably go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I'm just curious to find out, was there something about the times, those hard times and difficult times within the family and just within the times that were the troubles as we know them now, that maybe added fuel to your fire or to give you that sort of strength? I'm just thinking about, having to deal with loss and having to deal with a level of threat and all that sort of stuff. You're obviously in fight or flight and you're bereaved multiple times there as well. Did that channel your kind of focus into the fighting? Do you feel that it added something that maybe other boxers and other opponents that you met, albeit that they were a lot older than you, but didn't quite have the fire that you had in your belly?
Well, I think, like, yeah, I certainly had a fire in my belly, and like Gareth was a martial artist that died. My son's called Gareth as well here, but I definitely didn't waste any opportunities. Gareth had missed all those opportunities. My dad had missed all those opportunities. I certainly do not miss any opportunities in life. People say to me, "You're so motivated. How do you keep going? How do you be doing the things? How do you be so disciplined around those things?" Well, I don't mess about it. Life could change in a matter of minutes. We are all here in a whim. Next year, my knee might go. It might be the end of my running. So I am going to book that race because it could be my last race. And whenever I was doing that fighting as well, part of it wanted to honour Garrett's memory. So there was an honour in there.
Mm.
Plus, you get into the way of it. You get yes, I would have been like any young lad growing up in that era around Portadown. At 13, I'd have went and had a carry out before I went to the local teenage disco. That was the thing. Then once I started into that fighting, I think it's better for your mindset to become more disciplined.
Mm-hmm.
You feel better about yourself. You feel, stronger in the things that you're doing. You do get a bit of slagging. I didn't take a drink then from, like, probably people were going to university and starting drinking. I didn't drink from probably the age 17 to maybe about the age 27 before I had a pint. And that's the God's honest. At family events or weddings or anything, I wouldn't have been drinking because you needed, as a fighter, and for fighting in triathlon, for, like sprint races, you can dabble in it. You do a bit of cycling, you do a bit of swimming, you'll probably get round the race. In kickboxing, it's all or nothing. There's no one foot in the ring as a fighter. You are all in. You have to be 3 times a day in your training. You got to do your running in the morning. You've got to do your strength and conditioning whenever you're getting it done. And normally it was the evenings that you got a chance to meet up with the guys that you needed to spar and your training partners. You can't be dabbling in that. There was a time where I ended up at county physio. I was the Armagh physio, and then I was the down physio, and I wasn't getting the sessions done, and I wasn't having that same success. Probably I went to the World Championships in America, and I was Armagh physio during that year, and we had a good run in the National League. I wasn't getting my 3 sessions done a day. I was maybe getting 1 session done a day. There's maybe the odd day I wasn't getting any sessions done, and that's not good enough. As a fighter, you can't be doing that. So probably the loss gave me, the motivation. Plus, it channels you away from the head wrecker, because it's just a head wrecker that you have a brother 1 minute that you're very close to, and then he's gone, and then he's gone. But another part of it was, if anybody loses a sibling, I have great sympathy for people that lose siblings, because there's something about, the closeness of siblings. If anybody loses a sibling, they normally don't grieve if the parents are still alive, because you're really focusing on your parent. There was my mother who lost my dad, and within a decade of that, then she's lost my brother. So I probably at the time I didn't grieve at all. I turned to the training, which was probably a good thing to do that. I was more concerned for her. And then the other thing that happened was, like, we grew up just off the Gavahi Road. It was a very, very rough neighbourhood to grow up in. It had a lot of social issues. I tried to stay out of trouble because my ma had just been through enough. Like, the policy with me and my other brothers was, let's stay out of trouble here. And then through sport, we could have quite easily went down the road of getting involved in politics and paramilitaries that were in the area at the time. But again, to keep out of trouble, but also through sport, all my friends were from different sections of the community. A Protestant, and we also had a Muslim as well, Naeem Qureshi, still one of my good friends, and he's a great coach. And so we would have been friendly with people from all over the town as well, and that sort of kept things balanced out for us.
You certainly weren't holding back with regards to being all in, because you have a black belt in Kung Fu, third Dan black belt in Kung Fu, you have a black belt in karate, and a world championship title in kickboxing. I mean, any one of those three things on its own is unbelievable. Like, but to be sitting here now, chatting, looking back over time, do you ever even pause to think about that alone, even before we get into the running and the triathlon? Do you ever actually think about, like, holy shit, I did that, like?
Um, yeah, I suppose you look back and you reflect and you're proud of those things, but you're always just really like, what's the next project here?
Mm-hmm.
What's the next project? And things go in cycles as well. Like I give the kickboxing, maybe over a decade, going fully at it. I tried to get a world title, probably in my mid to late 20s, and it just eluded me. I got a European title, and then with the physio and the county thing taking over, I just knew it's very frustrating if you're used to winning and you're not winning. And at some point I said, right, it's time to look at something else. It's time to do something else. And I do a bit of mountaineering as well, and I think it was maybe 2001. I was away in Nepal climbing, and I'd went on a trip went on a trip whitewater rafting, and I seen these kayakers and the stuff that they were doing and these rapids, and I went, what's this all about? That's not the kayaking that we did with St Mary's Youth Club in Castlewellan Lake. This is a whole different ball game here. So then I
Yeah.
went on a campaign of learning to kayak, like whitewater kayak, running rapids and play boating and stuff like that. And that went on for a couple of years, and I did a few qualifications and courses, but a very, very dangerous sport. A real, real dangerous sport. A couple of friends of mine lost people doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And around the time of meeting a couple of friends, we had talked about doing this crazy adventure race. It was around the time that Eco Challenge and all was coming on TV. And there was this adventure race. A man called Noel Hanna, the late Noel Hanna. He was an Everest mountaineer, and he was a good friend of mine. And he had told me about this race that was going to be happening in Scotland called the Adrenaline Rush. And
Mm-hmm.
basically, it was an adventure race, a 500-kilometer adventure race of kayak and swimming, climbing, mountain biking, mountain running. But basically, when you're on the race until you get it done. You're not off the race until you cross that finish line 500 kilometers later. And you have to do this in a team. So we went and we got the guy a team, and we went and did that race, and it was just epic. I think that was like 2003 we done that. We done a lot of local races leading up to it, like smaller versions of it. And then we went and we did that race, and it was completely epic. And it was probably after that race and I had loads of crashes on the mountain bikes over the years. And I said to this boy who owned the bike shop, I'm thinking of buying a road bike because I think it's a bit safer than that old mountain biking. And he says, are you mad? Are you mad? Think again. But anyway, I got a road bike, and then I joined Apollo Cycling Club. And probably at the time, with not fighting and not training 3 times a day, I had it put on about 3 or 4 stone. County physio isn't a very healthy job to be at, because you're out 3 nights a week and away at weekends with the county, and you're eating with them, but you're not doing the same training they're doing. So I'd bought a bike and joined Apollo Cycling Club, probably the greatest thing I ever did. And I've been in that club ever since. And I've had a couple of spells as chairman and race director and different roles within the club. And I'll be out with the boys tomorrow morning, probably, or Sunday morning, depending. And through that, then I get into road racing, mountain bike racing, and cyclocross racing, and road racing. And my friend Desi, then my next door neighbour Desi O'Hagan, who's a great ultra runner, Desi and I then took a notion, because we'd done these adventure races, and we took a notion about doing a marathon. So we went and we did Paris Marathon, and then I did Belfast Marathon, and then we thought, we're cycling, we're doing this here, we'll try an Ironman. So we'd never even done a triathlon at this stage. I think everybody has the Ironman goal, and then they think, how do we get to that? So we says, right, we'll do a triathlon here, right? There's one next June in Camlock. So that was the first triathlon. That's the go-to. I always send people to Camlock to do their first triathlon. Anybody says to me they want to get into it. So off we go anyway, and we do Camlock Triathlon. Of course, my car blew out on the descent back into Camlock at the top of that climb. Blew the tire off the rim, hit something and blew the tire off the rim. Them old triathletes don't stay in straight lines going down the hills. So no one called the pothole out like they would. And I blew the tire off the rim and nearly came off. And my first ever triathlon. If it had been my second, and I went and had a cup of tea somewhere, but it was my first. So in the cleats, cyclocross style, jogging down in the Camlock with the bike on the shoulder. I think I was maybe the last person to rack a bike up, and you're like, kind of humiliated, but you're not. You just have to go with it. You can't be humiliated in these sports. You just have to go and get on with it. Yeah. And I always say you got to find a way to do it. Like, so I get into transition and then get out and run, and by the end of the day, I had that medal, and that was my first ever triathlon. And I loved it. Couldn't believe how hard the swim was, but that was the buzz, and that was the start of the journey towards Ironman.
So around sort of 2003 to 2009, by my reckoning, you were doing loads of mountain racing. You were doing all these marathon runs. Your adventure racing continues. All these things are sort of nearly all ticking along in the background because you kept doing those right up to 2009 or so. So first triathlon was 2007. Then in 2008, we see your cycling really coming to the fore because you had some real good results just in terms of your cycling around 2008. Ulster Mountain Bike Championships and cycling leagues and the UMA 3-day event, loads of stuff.
I did. I must say I enjoyed the cycling, and probably too, I always said whenever I started cycling, you used to lose maybe a half a stone a year cycling. Your weight would just steadily coming down, and if you're a big lad and you've trained out and kept up everybody, as you start losing the weight, you have the power there, and I found that I was a pretty good sprinter when it came to the bikes. And I had great people in the club mentoring me as well. A fella called Marty Rogers, one of our club stalwarts, and them boys have been great about mentoring you about positions and races. And I must say, I enjoyed the bike racing, and I enjoyed it so much. On a Saturday, you'd do a bike race, and you'd be thinking, I wonder, could I get into that race tomorrow down the country here? Would there be a place left? And you couldn't wait from week to week to go from one race to the next, and. I did. I really, really enjoyed it. I did the UMA 3-day a couple of times. Tough event, quite a hilly event. And it would have been if you were doing a bike race normally, there might have been 60 or 70 in it. You do the UMA 3-day, there's 200 in it. And all levels of people, even though there's supposed to be, I think it's fourth cat race now, the top that out, but you had all levels of people doing that race. But I really enjoyed it. So, yeah. And that would have got my bike fitness would have been really good. My time trials would have been good. I did do a few duathlons in around then. And I know a few triathletes, they just used to see me coming to up to those duathlons. There was a great series up in Titanic Quarter before they built the Odyssey and all these different places. There used to be Titanic series up there. And it was 2-mile run, then your 10-mile time trial, and then 2-mile run. And I used to be on the first run, maybe coming in 60th place. And by the end of the bike, I'd be sitting second. And you'd go into transition and you'd come out, and I wasn't a great runner, and you'd come out and that boy Savage would have passed me or somebody else would have passed me. And then you get to the turn and you'd be just counting them. As people do in races, you count them at the turn. I'm fourth, I'm fifth, I'm sixth. Can I hang on here? And a couple of those races I would have done quite well in them. Much to a couple of my seasoned triathletes looking at me just shaking the head because it was probably all about the bike, So that was the first dabbling into those duathlons, and I must say I really enjoyed that.
So from 2007, that was the beginning of your triathlon journey. The notion had been planted. You had seen this thing called Ironman. You thought, let's get after that. So you did Camlock, you did Mourne, you did Eskra, Acne. In 2009, and I normally like people talking through their own timeline, but I'm going to read this out for everybody to hear because I know if I let you talk about this that
Go
you'll
for it.
miss some of this
Go
stuff
for it. I haven't
because
looked
this
at
is
this
absolutely
timeline.
yeah, this is absolutely bonkers because in 2009 you did Dublin Marathon, the Causeway Marathon, the Mourne 2-day marathon, a Muathon mountain marathon, whatever that is. You can fill me in at the end. The Lisburn Half, you did Athy Olympic Triathlon, Eskra Sprint Triathlon, the Titanic Duathlon, you came 11th in that. You did the Lough Neagh Olympic, the Castlewellan Olympic, the Camlock Sprint. You were registered as a Category 3 cyclist with Cycling Ireland that year. You were still doing the Hill and Dale series in the background, running up and down mountains. And you polished it all off with a handy wee Ironman around Frankfurt. Now, what the hell were you doing with yourself or eating or what in 2009? Because that is just nuts.
It was a funny year. That one of the funniest things about that year was I would have cycled to the Hill and Dale. So the Hill and Dale is basically, I think it's maybe 9 or 10 races now. It used to be 11 races in the Mourne Mountains. It started off in Castlewell and Forest Park, and then it went down to like the likes of Slieve Binion and over proper. So it starts off in the forest, and then it goes to proper mountains. And we do see triathletes at it now. Still, I see triathlete jerseys at it. But in that particular year, myself and Desi O'Hagan, who was my co-pilot at Frankfurt, cycled to every Hill and Dale race. So we would have cycled from Lurgan down to Slieve Binion, and we would have done the race and cycled home in the dark, basically, and sometimes in the rain, in the pushing rain home. Mm-hmm. And everybody at the Hill and Dale, by the end of the series, talked about these two nutters because they'd be driving out through Hilltown, and me and him's heading towards Rathryland up that hill to head back to Lurgan. But it was great endurance for us. You know, it was great endurance. It probably wasn't the right thing to do in terms of prepping for an Ironman running. The mountain running is brilliant for getting your strength and your stamina up and your long-term endurance. But I've come to learn if you're doing a road marathon at the end of an Ironman, you need to be on the road and working at that stride length and everything else. But it was a great year. And yeah, it culminated by going to Frankfurt, and it's funny, that was 2009. After being back now, I can see how Ironman's evolved. It has completely evolved in terms of the way they do the whole production now. Mm-hmm. It was a bit more basic back in 2009, but that year Frankfurt was the European Championships. I think it does be again sometimes, but it was an amazing event. Fantastic event. Bob Davidson did it. There was a couple of people involved in Tri Limits did it that year. Mm-hmm. Owen Martin did it. Coach and great triathlete Owen Martin did it. And it's funny, Owen had a funny tip. He says, right, when you cross the line here, there's catchers. And I says, what's that about? And he says, when you cross the line here, they might need to catch you. And if they offer you the stretcher on the drip, take it. And I says, really? He says, yeah, if they offer you the drip, take it. It's like drinking a protein shake. You get instant recovery. So we were getting all these tips, being the first, full length distance. And the swim was a lake swim at Frankfurt, very, very hot. It was like 25 degrees, the lake. If it had been measured the water temperature the day before, they were going to ban the wetsuits, and we would have been terrified. But I remember just coming out and opening the zipper and a puff of smoke coming out of my wetsuit. It was so hot. But great cycle, fantastic cycle, great countryside through the cycling, and great run route as well. And I must say, I really enjoyed it, but I realised that at the end of it, I hadn't done enough running. I hadn't done a full, proper marathon programme because you're so paranoid about the swim and the biking would be my strong power play. But we did all that cycling and the mountain running and all the rest. But I realised you need to do a proper road marathon full programme here. So at the end of that year, after that, I said to myself, right, I'm going to do loads of running over the winter here. And that's how I ended up doing the 4 marathons in the 6 weeks, culminating in Dublin. And that was the winter, coming into the winter of 2009, and we had already entered Ironman Nice, go for a nice easy one. So we'd entered Nice, myself and Desi, for 2010. And so I had a fairly good winter's training over 2009 into Christmas into January. I was going at it, like running, biking, in the pool, real good discipline, eating healthy, losing weight. Everything was, because I'm a big lad. Like, I was a heavyweight kickboxer and at times dropped to middleweight, but I'm a big unit. Like, if anybody sees me at a triathlon, you can pick me out fairly quickly, like in the photographs, because I am a big looking unit.
You're getting out of your way. People are getting out of your way when you're in the swim, like.
Well, they still don't. But it's funny. I'm waiting for a new. They've brought in Hair Rocks and they've brought in something else. I'm waiting for a triathlon where you have to fight a man in transition. That would be very perfect. If they could bring that in, I'd be in the element. But anyway, I got into the 2010 season. Then I worked hard all that winter, and Desi and I had the flights booked and the hotel booked, and we were really looking forward to Nice. And then in March 2010, I was out with the club one night. We used to do this run. It's called the Goodyear Run. And we go out on a Tuesday and a Thursday night, and we do good hard session in the dark, lights on. It goes on a set route, and we were in Portadown doing up and overs. Any of the cyclists know what they are. We were doing these up and over drills, and my chain broke. Stopped at the side of the road. Probably should have phoned the wife to come and get me, but I just never like to give in on anything. So I says, I'm going to fix this here, and I've this Ironman coming up, so there'll be no messing about. I'm not taking no lifts off anybody here. Real stubborn. So I get the wee multi-tool out, and I break the chain, and I fix the chain, and I take a shortcut to try and catch up with the buddies who I knew what route they're doing. So down the Gavahi Road and swing through Portadown, and the lads are ahead of me, and I'm bombing it, like, and a man opens the door of his car in a wee tight area in Portadown, flips the door of his car open. He said afterwards he was looking at the bikes, and as he threw the door open, he thought, oh, I maybe should have checked in the mirror, and I was passing him. And as I passed him, I hit this door, side on the corner into the chest. And bad enough that was, as I'm falling to the right, a car's overtaking me at speed, and he just hits me full on. Like, probably if I had hit the ground, I'd have been dead. But he hit me with his front bumper and my thigh, and sent me up over the top of his car and landed on the far side of the road. And immediately the air goes out of my lungs. At about 7 broken ribs, at 16 fractures in total. I thought it broke my hip because that's where the pain was, where the car had hit me. But what happened was it severed the nerve, which is part of the sciatic nerve, down to my foot. My shoe had been removed off the right foot. It was up the road somewhere. Bike was up the road, and I was basically laying there trying to crawl off the road, because I think you go into survival mode and you're thinking, is there something else coming? And there was a car on the other side of the road, slammed on the brakes and just missed me, and crawl to the side of the road, and then you pass out, and you come round, there's people at you, and eventually end up in an ambulance, and spinal board's on and the neck collar's on, and they get you into the ambulance. And funny story, I'm in the ambulance and I'm morphing out of my head, and I'm coming in there to consciousness, and in a moment of clarity I reach for my pocket, and my phone's there, and I phone the house. All right, son. House going, Dad, are you not in the hospital? They have heard about this accident, because I was on the road for about an hour by the time they got the spinal board on, which is a funny thing that I'm morphing out of my head. And I says, yeah, but I'm grand. And then they get you into Craigavon, and they're doing all the tests on you. And over 3 or 4 days, then they realised that I had broke my spine in 6 places. So I had 6 spinal fractures, was millimetres away from being paralysed. which is why I have great sympathy for anybody that's, got a spinal injury, because I was very, very close to it. And unfortunately, I know a couple of people who have sustained spinal injuries. And ended up then, I was offered surgery to stabilise the spine. And I had a patient one time who had that surgery, and that was the end of sport, for them. So I said, no, I'll do whatever has to be done. So it was 6 weeks bed rest. So I ended up getting 6 weeks bed rest. One was in agony as well, and the foot had gone dead. So my foot, Paul the physio kicks in, and he's trying to wiggle my toes here, and I'm thinking, toes aren't working, that foot's not working. So it sustained quite a bad nerve injury to the foot and the spinal fracture. So 6 weeks in bed, which wasn't great. It was a dark time, and you're in agony as well. You're in a lot of pain and medication, and you're long nights where you're not sleeping. You just don't sleep as well when you're in that, scenario. And many a night looking to see what was on TV at 4 o'clock in the morning, because you knew that you just couldn't watch anything. And this is before Netflix and Fire Sticks were a thing. You were reliant on what the BBC was showing. But I always I'd worked with people who'd been in those type of scenarios, so I knew there was a process here. You were just, as I always said, you're killing time. You're going to kill time until there's healing, and then when there's healing, you start rehab, and then there's a process that has to be followed. Now, the hospital weren't any great help and all that, but only I knew what to be at. And the day that I was allowed to get up on crutches and do something, I said to my wife, if you can get me to the pool, I'll take it from there. So off we go to the pool on 2 crutches, and can't put weight through this right foot. And the people at the pool, up at Lurgan Pool at the time, God bless them, I think they felt that sorry for me. I was there every day for 6 weeks. I never missed a day at that pool, that they were giving me sessions. And I think you had a wee membership card with credits. They were bumping the credits onto the card for me, and they couldn't do enough for me. And every day I would get into the water on the crutches, and I'd put an aqua jogging belt on, and then I would just slowly start working, start mobilising, At the time I couldn't bend my spine. I couldn't bend to sit down, which was a difficulty getting in there to transport. I couldn't dress myself. My wife had to dress me, pull the shorts on me, pull the trousers off me. And slowly then over the next 6 weeks, you start mobilising a wee bit more and getting a wee bit better. And I was starting to get a wee bit of the nerve back into the leg. And then I realised, as I was putting weight through my foot, there was a lot of pain in the foot, and a big fracture in the foot had been missed because I couldn't feel it. So we then had to go into the air boot for that. And it was a whole very, big handling over the next 3 or 4 months. I was in crutches for 6 months. In the middle of all that, my poor mother had cancer, and that's why I wasn't really feeling sorry for myself, because I was more focused on her. And she was on bed rest in one house, and I was in bed rest on another place. And it was a whole handling, but anyway, you get through it. And just as I was coming out of that, I was able to travel, and I said, I want to go to this place, Club La Santa, because I hear there's physios there, and there's pools there, and there's gyms there. And so I ended up going on my 2 crutches. I couldn't really walk, but I got to Club La Santa. Before that, I had my 2 lads run either side of me on a mountain bike to see could I pedal, because I could sit on a turbo exercise bike, and I couldn't cycle. I was like a child trying to cycle the Hammerhead where I live. I couldn't do it. And then a couple of weeks later, I'd worked to build up strength that I was able to do that wee bit of a cycle. And I said, here, this is me now. I am sorted. I am back on a bike here. And then I would start cycling to our club events on the mountain bike. But I couldn't walk still. I couldn't walk. And I was trying to get back into a bit of work, because I was self-employed when that happened to me. And there was nobody paying my bills. So tough old times. But went to Club La Santa, and they have, I don't know if you've been to Club La Santa. I know you've done lands, which is very impressive, Mickey. I'm very jealous of you doing lands. But Club La Santa is an amazing place. It was developed a way back in the 50s as a wellness centre. So it has that to it. It has your 3 Olympic pools. It only had 1 then, it's 3 now, but it has a bike centre. And every day there's wee groups go out. So I had went and did a wee cycle on my own on a road bike. Couldn't do much, but I said I'll join the basic group the next morning. So I went out with the basic group on the bike the next morning, and there was me and a girl. Very quickly, before we got to the first village, where it dropped. Like, it was like humiliating, but it's part of the journey. Progress is small steps, and so me and this girl get dropped, and I says, "What's wrong with you?" And she says, "Well, I've just had foot surgery." And what happened to you? He says, I do a bit of marathon running. And I says, "That's right. And what sort of marathon run do you do? And what was your time?" And she won the London Marathon, this girl. I can't remember her name now. And she ended up qualifying for the World Championships, and then she had this surgery, but she never came back again. So she beat Paula Radcliffe in the London Marathon one year. But anyway, that's who was at Club de Santa. And I did a
In
week
my head,
there,
that's
and I
turned
ended up
into
doing...
a triathlon version of that scene from Jaws. You broke your foot? Well, I got that beat.
What I done? Well, the funny thing was, I met that girl. So me and that girl cycled that day, and then we cycled every day. And I used to meet her in the restaurant at night, and she was like, "What do you mean you're in crutches?" She couldn't understand how I was still in crutches, that I'd been cycling that day. But you could cycle, but I couldn't put any weight through the foot. But I ended up doing 3 visits to Club La Santa as part of my rehab. And every time you'd go, you'd get 10 times better. And I just ended it up, as I went back to work, I made it my business every morning to get up, go to the pool, do my aqua jogging, do my swimming, go to the gym, do that, and then you'd go and do your work. So it was just like training. To me, that was just like training. There was a process I had to follow. And as time went on, I got stronger and stronger, and then I ended up getting back out on the bike. So the bike was the first place to go. And once I started cycling, I wanted to race again. So I ended up, was demoted to 4th cat, and then I was on a mission then to get from 4th cat back to 3rd cat. And was absolutely again in the ambulance on the way into the hospital that night of that accident. I'm already going, will I make Nice? Will I make Nice? Which was that June. No, by that June I was still in crutches, So Desi, fair play, I went and did Nice on his own, and a couple of years later I went back and I did the Ironman bike course in Nice. It was a box that had to be ticked, so I went back and did it. Mm-hmm. But that was the start of then coming back to cycling, and I had a load of these things called nerve conduction studies, and they told me, "Listen, big lad, running's going to be out for you. You're probably always going to have a limp, and the running's going to be out." And I just worked methodically, like with the knowledge I have, and like within 2 years I was jogging, and shortly after jogging, then eventually got back running. Part of my rehab of getting back was I could cycle, but in the gym, I ended up doing a lot of boxing again, because with the boxing, I could get back into the cardio, and I could stand and I could box, and I ended up then going back into the martial arts in a way, going back to kickboxing training and realising I could kick and I could do different things. And then that probably took me back into kickboxing. And then I heard also that there was a World Masters. As part of the World Championships, they introduced a Masters over 35s, and the thing in your head goes, could I do that? And eventually, I got back into kickboxing, and then I went back and I fought in the World Championships like 4 times and won it twice, and lost it twice, but won it twice. Get beaten finals and won it, and that sort of brought me back up to kind of 2019, and then I suppose to further the journey on, as part of fighting, you got to run. You've got to be running. So I was enjoying my running, was doing a wee bit of cycling. Part of my rehab, I'd been swimming, and then I'd picked up a wee eye injury. Plus, it was time to retire from the kickboxing, as my 2 sons, who are great guides for me, said, "Hold on, you've won it at heavyweight, you've won it at middleweight. You don't need to fight anymore." Plus, I picked up a wee eye injury. And the eye injury meant I shouldn't really be fighting or sparring. And at a gym I used to train in Belfast, which is called the Unit, and there's a lad in there called Mark Rainey. Mark's in his 20s. I always have to remind him that he's in his 20s and I'm not. And Mark, in the gym, he used to look at my Ironman ink that we've earned, and he was like, he was just talking about it all the time and talking about triathlon. And he said to me, what about doing an Ironman? And I was like, are you mad? Are you mental? He hadn't done a triathlon at that stage, but he was a handball champion. He's an Irish handball champion, and he's just a unit. He's an animal. So he says to me, what about a triathlon? And I says, well, okay, we'll go and do a triathlon. So back into the pool again, and it was great for me too. From stopping fighting, I just, the way I'm built, I need something. I need a goal. I need something to work towards, and it just keeps me focused in life. And I always like that discipline of having a project. I always say to people, how do you get motivated? Pay the entry fee. The motivation comes.
Whenever I heard the word project, I'm thinking that you were the project yourself, having been told that you would never walk again. I'm just thinking there, the project was yourself. You were rehabbing yourself, retraining yourself, rebuilding yourself as such. I'm intrigued to find out what was the driving force behind that. And I know that whenever the doctors said you might never run again, or you'd be doing well to walk again, and then you ended up actually going back to 2 world championship fights. It's absolutely amazing, and I know I'm just taking you a wee step just before we get into the next Ironman journey. But where did that strength and that resilience come from?
I think going back to my early life, my teens, and all that I'd been through in those years, and also the knowledge I have because of the job I do. There's been many a person that I've worked with has been told that's not going to happen for you again. And I just always think that you'll find a way. It's like the one that won't find a way is if someone has a complete spinal injury. It's awful devastating for them, and they'll not be able to rehab that back, but they'll always get back doing something. So I take inspiration from, like, I know people who have had inspirational stories where they've come back from horrific injuries, and many of them I've worked with, and they've got back to doing what they wanted to do. But I think if you're willing to do the work, if you do it methodically, if you do it in steps, and thankfully, like very, very slowly, very patiently, I go from walking with crutches to out power walking with walking poles, to walking in really stiff boots, to walking in gutties, to doing step work, to I used to go up to the PEC in Belfast and I just locked myself away for 2 hours in rehab. And slowly, methodically, you start building on things and seeing a bit of progress. But you need to have the patience, and you need to, I always say, keep the faith. You need to keep the faith that if you work at these things, they will get better and they will improve. And for some reason, I have that faith. I have that faith. I have it for patients who are going through similar journeys, and I have it for myself. And that's what you do. And then you do what you can. You do what you can. And then there's a bit of survival in it too. I think my sport, yes, but also in life, I'm a fighter. I will fight and keep fighting and don't give up, And that wee saying, if you're going through hell, keep on going. If you're going through bad times, keep on going. You will come out the other side. And I was very good about working through that.
It's just worthwhile reflecting on that wee bit, because if anybody needs physio, I mean, you're the guy, you're the man to go to, because you've been there, done that, wore the t-shirt, and whenever you've taken yourself from that absolutely horrendous crash, I mean, and I don't think I've ever heard an accident described like that before, and it's just absolutely brutal what happened. And for the recovery, for the fact that you were told that it wouldn't happen, but you knew different, and you went and you got yourself back on track and pretty much fixed yourself. So, if you can do that for yourself, and you know what it's like to be lying in those beds, in those moments, in those dark moments that you described, then you're the guy that people should be reaching out to. I'm going to put the link to your Instagram page and all on the description of this podcast, if anybody wants to reach out just for you, Paul, with regards to accessing you as a physio for the future. So let's get back on track then. This guy spotted the Ironman tattoo on the back of the calf, presumably, and
No, Mickey, mine's on my shoulder here.
yours is on the shoulder.
Forget about that calf stuff. I want people in the swimming pool to know who I am. Only joking. I didn't know people went for the calf whenever I got mine done. So that was
I
back in
see.
the day.
This was back in the day, yeah. So the ink told its own yarn, and this mate of yours got intrigued. So the two lads are back on track now and searching for the next Ironman adventure.
Yeah, so Mark did a wee bit of studying around this, and he says, "Oh, there's Ironman Barcelona, so that would be a great one to do. That's a real easy one. That's one for rookies like us." And I goes, "Let me look at this here on the Ironman page. As you know, it gives you the wee profile. Is it flat? Is it hilly? What's the temperature?" And I read all that, and I'll tell you now, we were missold completely on that. That's a load of bull. And
don't be telling me that. I've signed up for it for
I know
next
you
year.
have. I know you have. I know you have. A friend of mine did Ironman Barcelona the year before we did, and I think they shortened the swim to K because there was waves that you could have surfed. And
Swim's always going to be the dodgy aspect, but you know.
So we entered Ironman Barcelona, and we did a couple of local triathlons, including Sheephaven Half, and then we trained away. And do you know what? I trained really well. Like I'd forgotten a few things that I'll explain to you later. You know, things that I'd forgotten, really important things about Ironman. But anyway, we trained really well. We booked our accommodation in Calais, where the Ironman is. It's not in Barcelona, which is the first thing I'll say to any listeners that think they're going to Barcelona for a long weekend. You're not. You're going up the coast a wee bit to Calais, which is a most beautiful place. I really like Calais. So off we go to Calais anyway, and I think the first mistake we made was we arrived in the early hours of the Friday, thinking this would be a good idea. Me and Mark were in this budget hotel. We arrived in the early hours of the Friday. So basically you're getting your bike built and you test the bike a wee bit. And I remember doing the bike test and Mark was ahead of me. And normally, no disrespect to Mark, but I would be at twice the speed Mark's at. And I was behind him a wee bit. And I says, this must be me psychologically saving myself here for the race, like tomorrow or whatever it was. And so that was grand anyway. We get our bikes checked in and we go to bed. And like every good Ironman knows, you don't get any sleep the night before an Ironman.
No.
One of my good friends, Eamon Brady, says, I always have a wee nap the afternoon before because you ain't getting any sleep that night, boy. And, and it's not nerves. It must be adrenaline or something. It must be adrenaline. I was walking down to Cascais and there was two girls and one girl says, oh, did you sleep last night? And she says, not a chance. If you're getting up at 4 a.m., you know. So anyway, we get up the next day and we head down to the start area. And it was extremely hot. As the sun came up, it was really hot. It's not one for standing around with your swim cap on while you're waiting to get into the water. The sweat was running out of my hat as I lifted the wee lid off the side of the hut. The water was running down my face. It was so warm. The sun was up. I think the 70s went first. So they let them away first. So we're waiting to get into the water and it was hot. And also another mistake that I've made and I've learned since not to do this was I said, I'll get into this pen here with the 130 swimmers because that's about my time, you know, approximately. That's a mistake. A good Ironman told me, get you in as soon as you can. Not with the ones that are going to swim over the top of you, but get into the water as quick as you can, that you're not standing around there. And the mistake of coming out with the slow swimmers was when you come out, there's hardly any bikes in the course. They're all the way down the road. So get into the water is a tip that I'll give any rookies fairly early on. You know, people will swim around you anyway, like they do in local races. If you think you're going to be slow in the swim, do not be getting in last. Plus, you're impacting on the overall cutoff time. Yeah, the cutoff's supposed to be your time, but in a lot of races it's not. And I'll talk about that in a wee minute. So we go and we do Calais, we do the swim. So I come out of the swim. My swim was a wee bit longer than it should have been. The water was very, very hot that particular year. It was very warm. They were bordering on non-wetsuit swim. So get up through transition anyway and go out onto the bike. And as I'm on the bike course, I'm feeling good, but if I'm on the bike course, there's nobody in front of me. There's just no bikes on the course. And it's a really, really windy course that year. It's a block headwind going out. And definitely anybody, I know you're not allowed to draft, but you'll be in bikes in front of you. You're getting a wee bit of shelter. And I remember doing that cycle. And I remember looking at a petrol station I was passing, and I was just thinking, I am completely parched here. I am dry as anything here. I was drinking whatever I had on the bike, but it just wasn't hitting it. And I was dehydrated after that swim. I think I'd overcooked it on the swim. I'd went too hard. I'd busted myself. And out on the bike, I had nothing. And I remember my legs started to cramp really quickly. My adductors, my groin, my inner thighs were cramping very, very quickly, which they would never do on a bike. This was like 20k into the bike, and I'm getting through the aid stations. I'm trying to get the electrolytes in, but I was cramping really bad. And in Calais, in Barcelona that year, the course was a 90k lap. So you go out 45k, you go up a big hill known as Heartbreak Hill. And when I got to the top of that hill, to the aid station where you get your personal leads bag, a girl says to me, I think we're going to miss the cutoff. And I was going, what are you talking about? I didn't even know there was a cutoff. It hadn't registered with me because I was so confident in my own ability and times. I hadn't even looked at that cutoff. I had looked at the cutoff for like the last 10k of the run. And I was going, what are you talking about? And as I turned down that hill, I bombed it as hard as I could back into Calais where the turn was. My electrolytes were getting better now. My cramp was easing off. I was starting to get a bit more power. The tailwind was behind me. But as I came into the turn in Calais, which is a roundabout you'll come into, they pulled a barrier across the road and there was about 40 people there. And basically the cutoff was something like 5.5 hours for the swim and the first 90k. There was a row about it on a lot of forums afterwards that it was too tight, that it wasn't right. And it should be your individual time, whereas they had it as a set time from the start of the race. Right. There was about 40 people there, and we were all raging. And I was thinking, what can I do here? Can I sneak back out onto the bike course? But basically, they put a big axe through your number, like. And in hindsight, I don't know what I got into difficulty. I was dehydrated. I recovered very quickly, but it was like the world just collapses in around you. You've done all this work. Your family's watching on the tracker. I know what happened to a very esteemed Ironman out in Cascais as well, but your family's watching on the tracker and there you are, DNF'd. You then have to cycle into transition where everybody's applauding you in because they think you've done your bike course, and it's just humiliating. You get into transition and they won't let you near any of your gear. I had to beg them to give me a pair of goodies to wear and out of my bag, and I was like devastated, completely devastated. All this work done, but it is what it is. You just have to suck it up. And then Mark's out on the course, so I'm out on the run course trying to support him, and he had a great race. He got it done. He got the race done. He just took his time and got around it. And you're then trying to be positive and smile and happy. Any gear that I'd got in the shop was dumped. You don't want to look at it. You don't want to see it. You're like, get rid of that. I don't want that. One of the things I did do with the bag they give you was I took that bag, which was, the wee rucksack, and I went to the pool every morning and my gear in it. And it was just a focus then for the comeback, which was planned, But so you go back and you fail, but as people say, failure is just an excuse to start again. And but I learned a lot of it. I learned a lot from it. I studied a lot into electrolytes, into fueling, my fueling strategy was all wrong because it has evolved since the 10 years that I had done my first one. The fueling strategies are all different. I started then over that winter going out with the club. In the winter, you know, a good club cyclist will carry a bottle and they won't even drink it probably. I was going out and I was downing a bottle every half hour and then making them stop at a garage so I could get more water, to put in more powder, to try and get my stomach used to this 100 to 120 grams an hour fueling that we need for Ironman. So I started studying into this. I started using salt stick tablets, all these wee things. And the first Ironman that I could get at whenever I was home was Ironman Hamburg, was the first one that I could get physically at in that June. And I did. I went and prepared a lot better than the previous one. Was really strict about all those different wee elements and disciplines, and really worked on my swimming to make it more comfortable. Swimming, I'm not in a club or anything, but there's a swim coach, Francie McAlinton. I'll give a shout out to him. Francie famously has swam around Loch Ness. He's in Lurgan Masters. He's a legend. Any time that he would see me in the pool, whether I wanted it or not, he would say, "Big lad, you're reaching for the sky there, you're doing this, you're doing that, you're crossing the tram lines," and I would be hiding in the pool that he wouldn't see me, but he would always give me a bit of advice. And God bless him, he changed my breathing technique completely. He just completely says, "Throw that out, you're an open water swimmer, you need to do this." And I'm still in touch with Francie, and he still takes me for a few lessons and gives me a few pointers. God bless him. He says, "We're going to work on your open water swimming this year for rough seas. That's where we need to go." But anyway, so I went and I did Hamburg. Flew into Hamburg on my own. Met my son Sean, who's a professional MMA fighter. He was in Thailand on training camp, and he flew into Hamburg to do my corner. I'm normally doing his, and thoroughly enjoyed it.
So Ironman Hamburg went to plan, and you had the confidence back. Did you go back to Barcelona then for redemption?
Absolutely. That was always the goal. You know, once I'd failed it the year before, I couldn't wait to get back to Barcelona. It was just one of those things was hanging over me. I couldn't really settle until I got it sorted out. You know, I had to go back and do it. And I went back, and, you know, a couple of things that I got wrong before, I had learned from that. So thankfully, my wife decided that she would come with me for this one. But that meant we could make a bit of a holiday out of it. It meant we could go a wee bit earlier. We stayed in a nice hotel. And that year, the race, they had changed the format a little bit. They had turned it into, on the bike course, 360k loops. And that meant that week that I was there before it, I could go out and practice the bike course and get familiar with it and know where to push and how to push. It was still a very hot week. I think the temperature in race day got up to 34 degrees when we were on the bike course. But there was only a wee light breeze on it, so there wasn't that headwind that I'd incurred the year before. They'd taken out the big hill at the end of the 90k loop, Heartbreak Hill as it was called, was out with these 60k loops. And they had changed the time difference, all the time cut-offs as well. So now the swim was challenging. I was in the water for a long time. I'd swam about 5k with all the currents. They told us getting in that the water was moving right to left here, and they said you have to get round this first buoy here. So you really gotta aim away out to the side, and then it'll bring you around. And like the first K of the course, then you had the flow with you, and then you turned. And in Barcelona, it's a big long 2k straight, and that was right into that current, and it was challenging. The other tip I would give people for doing Barcelona is that in that, as the sun was coming up, you're swimming into it, and it was very, very hard to see the yellow markers with the sun direct on. I got a wee lesson on my choice of goggles, and I've learned from that. You need to have those photochromic goggles that you'll be able to sight. But get down that long 2k, took my time, had done loads of really good preparation. And then you did the last turn, and it basically just carried you up towards the finish. but it would have shot you way out to the side of it. It would have brought you in. So there was a bit of an effort to get round the last buoy before you come out. And then there's pictures of me coming out of the water, and I am over the moon. Like, I am just over the moon to have got the swim done, and I've done it well. And I made a real point of not taking too much out of myself on the swim.
Yeah.
And the other thing I learned was from the previous year, and I do this now on all my races, but particularly on the longer events, is on the way to the swim start, I'm downing 1.5 litres to 2 litres of carbs and electrolytes for that swim. I'm taking those in before I hit the water. And when I come out of the water, I have another spare bottle made up of electrolytes and carbs that I'm downing as I'm in transition. The Ironman transitions are always that wee bit longer, so you have a bit more time to get stuff into you. And then I went out on the bike and had a cracker bike. Like, for me, 5.5 hour bike was fantastic. Again, a lovely bike course, very, very hot. Didn't really notice how hot it was while I was on the bike, and was just passing loads of bikes. Unfortunately, there was a crash. 2 cyclists touched wheels at the first roundabout that you'll come to as you hit that bike course, and a person died, unfortunately, which was awful. Yeah. And when I look at my wee Ironman flag with my name on it, I'm conscious that one name didn't make it home. But it puts things into perspective that these are challenging events, and there's always that risk. And again, as an older athlete, I always have to be, conscious that my wife's with me. I don't want anything bad happening, even, on the run, taking chances in the heat. So out onto the run, I had a great first 20k on the run, and then I did get a wee bit of sunstroke. And also in Hamburg, I had definitely been challenged by, no matter what I do, come R9 into the race, your stomach's just about had it. And I think you can tolerate the real good fueling on the bike. I was definitely getting 100 grams, 120 grams an hour down in the bike, but when you come out onto the run, it becomes a bit more challenging. And eventually my stomach starts saying no to everything. And I did get a wee bit of heat stroke, but it's a funny thing, going into that race, I had written on my arm all the cutoffs. I was so precise about the mistakes I made the year before. I knew the cutoff for the bike. I knew the cutoff for the run. I knew the last cutoff on the run for the last 10k. I had all those times written down in my arm, because whenever you get to the last 10k of an Ironman, your head's not right. You're getting a bit delirious. You're not making decisions right. And I remember on the lap, getting to my wife and saying to her, "How long have I left? Am I all right?" And she says, "You could go off and have a cup of tea, mate, and you'll still be all right." She didn't say that. I have to say that. She's always telling us off for saying that. But she says, "You could go and have a cup of tea and lay down and you'd still be all right." And I says, "You sure now?" And she says, "Yes, 100%. So, but all those wee things start going. You start making, silly decisions. So you always have to bear those things in mind. And it's great if you have somebody with you, but if you haven't, write those cutoffs down for full Ironman on your arm, particularly if the course is challenging. If you've done a hot course and you've done Lanzarote and you know how it goes, you're getting slightly dehydrated, you're running out of carbs, your stomach's giving you bother. All those wee things add up. But the happiest man in the world to hit that red carpet in Barcelona and come down it, and mission achieved, and enjoyed it, and enjoyed the next couple of days in Calais, and enjoyed it, the fact that my wife was with me, and she came to Cascais with me as well. And on note, on the last day of leaving Cascais, she went and bought a T-shirt that says "Iron Support Crew," which I took a great positive. And I goes, "Oh, I just like it," So,
it's worth probably mentioning for anybody that's going to Barcelona thinking that it's going to be an easy Ironman. There's probably no such thing as an easy Ironman, because 140.6 mile is 140.6 mile, irrespective of the weather and the elevation and the wind and whatever else. But the swim in Barcelona is something that people probably overlook and potentially underestimate. So do your homework. Get as much open water experience as you can before you go to Barcelona. And don't sign up to an Ironman thinking, I'll go for this one because it's going to be easier than another Ironman. When you're in the sea, in a swell with the wind and surf beating off you with 2,500 people, that's something that you shouldn't be taking lightly. So just throw that out there for anybody getting inspired and getting a wee bit ahead of themselves. Yes, go for it, but by all means, do what you have done, Paul, and turn up on the day prepared and ready to rock.
Yes, 100%. Barcelona is not an easy Ironman. There's a load of, like, I'd done Hamburg a few months before it, and Hamburg I found a lot easier. You know, the bike course is a lot more varied in that you're going through little villages and you're going along these cycle paths, and there's a fair bit of shelter on it. There's no hills on it at all. It's very straightforward. Lovely bike course. The run course is very varied. There's a wee bit of city centre. There's a wee bit of a forest. There's plenty of shelter on it. Barcelona is exposed. You know, the bike course is exposed. If the wind's up, you are going to know about it. It's not overly hilly on paper, but there's a few wee rises on it, but which are grand if you've done the training for it. But it can be challenging. The conditions are very changeable. And it last 2 years ago, at friends did it. It was in the low 20s. The year before, when I did it, it was 30 degrees on the run. And there was people dropping all over the place. So yeah, you have to be prepared for every eventuality that could come up on the race. You need to have your sun, cream on. You need to have your white gear on you or your brightly coloured gear for the bike to keep you protected, and you need to have your sun hat with you, and all those different things you got to factor in. All those wee unknowns and things that could go wrong here, you have to be prepared for.
Absolutely. Paul, you did mention there whenever you were going through that sort of the Ironman story there about your son who's a pro fighter. He came over to support you. I think you were saying out in Hamburg. And you had said that you're normally in his corner. I just wanted to kind of pick up on yourself just as a family man, as a father, as a role model. And I know it's something that I was very keen to do in terms of bettering myself so that I would be a more positive role model to my sons. I've got 4 lads, and I know you have a few boys there as well. So, whenever you're looking back, and I'm sure your Cubs would be the first to say that you're a positive male role model, certainly. And what is your role with your boys now? Are you the coach, the physio, and dad? Are you? Is there an order to those? Are they ranked in various ways? What's your take on that?
Well, yeah, I'm very blessed. I've got 2 lads, Gareth and Sean, and I have a daughter as well who is absolutely amazing. She's got a movie premiere here on Monday night coming, which is class. I'm lucky I've got 3 great kids, 3 great human beings. No matter what they achieve, they're 3 great human beings. They've all sadly left the nest here now, but they're not too far away. And I'm very blessed that my 2 lads are MMA fighters, both of them very successful. Sean's pro. So they're very, very successful, and we have had some great adventures over the years, and still do have. If there's a fight coming up, then my training will go by the wayside a wee bit to help them prepare in terms of working with them. They both fight out of a gym in Belfast, Fight Academy Ireland, which is the top gym probably in the country, if not in the world. Some people would say it's got a load of top professionals coming out of it. And they were in our gym in Lurgan, and they still train here. We have a gym in Lurgan which is called New Era Gym, and I'm a coach up at that gym, which is a great privilege and something to do on a voluntary basis. And they will train with me up there, and Gareth does some of the coaching up there with me 1 night a week. And but if we're prepping for fights, then it's full on. You go into what they call fight camp, so you're taking over all the time. But if you have a fight coming up, you go into fight camp, and fight camp they'll be training 3 times a day. And I suppose they have seen me doing that over the years, and as recently as 7 or 8 years ago, I'd have been doing that. So they know the process, and And they're a great inspiration to me. Like, they're great lads, and my daughter as well. You know, they'll take a real interest in what I'm doing, and vice versa. And we're very lucky that we all have each other. And my wife as well is a great inspiration too. So in terms of the family unit, we're a very, very close family unit, very supportive family unit. Like, already we're talking about what am I going to do next year here in terms of projects. We're waiting on fight news maybe coming in for Sean. We had hoped he would have been fighting in Dubai. Sean fought in the Odyssey in May in a big show, and he's fought in the O2 Arena in London. We were hoping he would get a fight in Dubai there, and it just didn't work out. He picked up a wee injury. Yeah, I'm constantly physio. He was here a couple of days ago with an injury, so but it means that you can advise on those things and sort those things out, and definitely my background has helped in terms of us planning out training and things like that we're going to do.
The other thing that you do, Paul, as well outside of sport is the victims support that you offer for people that have been bereaved through the Troubles and that too, and it's a very noble and honourable thing that you do, based on your own experiences.
Well, it's more. There's a lot of charitable groups out there that provide practical support and day-to-day support. There's a load of big organisations based in different parts of the north that do that. I'm on a thing, and I've been on it now for 10 years, called the Victims and Survivors Forum. So basically, we're in legislation to advise government on issues around legacy. Legacy, when you have the term legacy, it's the legacy of the Troubles, the legacy of the conflict. Just whenever we had Good Friday Agreement and all the things that happened around that, nobody really dealt with issues around victims. We've recently had things in the news like the Bloody Sunday case. We've had a Legacy Act that was imposed by the last British government. So part of the forum's remit is to advise government. So we advise government if they'll listen. So as part of my job there, I have spoken in things like the House of Lords and the House of Commons, and I have a meeting with the Secretary of State coming up next week. We've met with the Irish government there recently. So ours is to advise on government legislation in terms of how we proceed in dealing with the conflict, dealing with the past, basically. Mm-hmm. People have never had things like acknowledgement. There's been no real acknowledgement. There's no memorial here anywhere in the north to the Troubles because it's so hard to deal with. If you go to 9/11 and you see that memorial there, they can't really do that in Northern Ireland because there'd be victims and there'd be perpetrators and they'd all be in the same list and nobody would agree to it. It's all very, very difficult things to agree to. And but we've brought in a lot of really good change over the 10 years that I've been involved in it. So I give them like 2 days a month, and sometimes it's more than that. Some days it's 2 days a week, and it's been a great thing to be able to do, and to be able to progress the conversation and be involved in reconciliation as well, and move things forward and try and deal with these things for people.
No, fair play to you, Paul. It's more than useful. It's I can't really put it into words, but I'm in awe of anybody that can come through trauma of any shape or any description and dust themselves down, make a go of life, get after experiences and live their life to the fullest like you have, and still have that bit of you that wants to make things better for everyone else. It's very, very inspirational. Let's just finish off now with sporting predictions for 2026. Are we looking at any event? You've already said you're hoping to see what the fight card's going to be like for the Cubs, but is there anything you're maybe eyeing up in the world of triathlon or adventure racing or mountain biking or mountain marathons, or what's next?
Well, I suppose with the whole thing around Barcelona and failing, I've brought in that like ethos this year of it's all or nothing, both feet in rather than 1 foot doing this and 1 foot doing the other. And that's why this year I really focused on the triathlon. My triathlon racing is not perfect by any means. It has a load of flaws in it, and we're just in winter. I'm just back training now. I took my week off after Cascais, I need to focus on a load of things that I need to improve on. I need to improve on my swimming, my open water swimming, my ability to breathe on the left side, if that's where the beach is, and we're swimming down the shore at Skerries, and so that there's a lot of things I need to work on. I need to work on my open water swimming, which I find it hard. I'm never afraid in the open water, no matter how bad it is. And we had some really bad swims this year in Rostrevor and Sheephaven, but I can't focus. I just cannot get the rhythm going the way I should. So I need to work on a load of those things. And next year, I'm waiting to see where the National Points Series comes out. This is episode 60 for you, Mickey, and next year I will be racing in the 60s for the first year. So I had a new age category next year. I wonder, could I better myself in where my ranking would be in the age category? So that national series is a brilliant wee motivator for you. You just get that list out and you go, Jesus, right, there's a wee race there and there's a wee race there. So I'm going to try and hit those races and improve on a load of things to try and do them better. And I'd love to do, I think Ironman is very challenging to do a full Ironman again in terms of the time commitment to it. I've done 3/4 now. I must say I really enjoyed doing the half at Cascais. You're not just under the same pressure. So I'm looking at a couple of halves. A lot of the halves in the early part of next year are sold out already. It's crazy.
Yeah,
crazy. It's like getting concert tickets. It's like getting Oasis tickets. A lot of the races are gone for people. So I'm looking at maybe, I took a wee notion about Morocco there. There's a race in Morocco. It's just been over, maybe a bit hot, but yeah, I have a bucket list. I'm sure you have one too.
Yeah.
And on that bucket list, there's many things, you know. I've got two cubs getting married the year after, next one early in the year and one later in the year, and I'd love to go and race in America, but I'm told the budget is going to be curtailed till we get these weddings over. I've one cub just get married last year, and so two in the 1 year. It's like two Ironman were bad in the 1 year, but two weddings is a whole different ball game. So, but I have my bucket list of my Alpe d'Huez on it, and I have Alcatraz on it, and I've got. I'd love to do Ironman California, the full one of it. I've Ironman Texas. I looked at. You know yourself. You just have a list of things, and what could you get done, and what would the budget allow? You know, without getting too out of hand. Like, and if you can make a holiday out of it, even better. You know.
Brilliant stuff, Paul. That's amazing. Really, really enjoyed chatting to you. Phenomenal journey. Loads and loads and loads of lessons to be learned from that chat. You just make sure that you don't get involved in any more crashes and have to do any more rehab, for Christ of Almighty. That's the last thing that you need at this stage. And don't forget as well, you're going to be the young buck in this 60 to 65 age group category. You're going to be like, you know.
In triathlon, Mickey, that means nothing, because I've looked at some of our amazing, like triathlon's an amazing sport, because it doesn't matter if you're male, female, it doesn't matter what age you are. Like, some of the people who are coming third overall in the races are in that age category. You know, they're just
phenomenal athletes.
Phenomenal. They're phenomenal. Like, and male, female means nothing. There's some of our females are just absolutely amazing. You know, the speed of them, the athleticism, the toughness of they are, resilient they are in the water despite the weather conditions. Like, it's just an amazing sport. And no matter what race you've done, you go back to do it the following year, it's different because the conditions are different. And so that's like, there's loads out there for us to get our teeth into. Like,
Paul, thanks very much for sharing that with us, and all the very best.
Thank you, Mickey. It's been a privilege to talk to you, and I hope people enjoy the episode.